I can investigate and use the formulas for area and perimeter of rectangles. How many units is the length of the longest side? So let's take a moment and count the length of the longest side. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 units long. What is the length of the opposite side? Well, if you look, the opposite side is the exact same length because a rectangle has 2 sides that are exactly the same and 2 other sides that are exactly the same. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the opposite side. What is the sum of the rectangle's 2 longest sides? Well, one side is 5, the other side is 5. What does the word sum mean? Sum. The word sum is the answer to an addition problem. So if I take the longest side, 5, plus the other longest side, 5, 5 plus 5 equals 10. So how many units is the length of the shortest side? Well, that's kind of just easy to count just by looking. I see 2 squares. So it's 2 units long. And the length of the missing side, the side we haven't looked at yet, what is that length? Well, we know that one side is 2, and this is a true rectangle, so that means the other side must also be 2. What is the sum of the rectangle's 2 shortest lengths? Well, 2 plus 2 equals 4. What does the word sum mean again? Sum. So, the sum of my 2 longest sides was 10 units. The sum of my 2 shortest sides was 4 units. If I add these sums together, it will give me the perimeter. The perimeter is when you add all sides together. The perimeter of my rectangle is 14 units. Notice the word perimeter is in blue because that's a very important word for you to know. Perimeter, let's say you want to buy a fence for your yard. You don't need to know how big of a yard you have in the middle because the fence isn't going through the yard, it's going to go around the yard. Perimeter is the length around each side of the yard or each side of the shape. It's around it, not through it, but around it. And to find the perimeter, you add every side together. So let's look at this rectangle again. How many square units are in one row? Well, one row has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 square units. In other words, there's 5 squares in one row. And how many rows of 5 square units are there? Well, I see row 1, I see row 2. So there's 2 rows with 5 square units in them. So let's find out how many square units there are in the rectangle, counting by 5s. 5, 10. What is the area? Now look, the area is in blue. So when I think about area, it's the space that's being filled up in the square or in the shape. So if I wanted to put a fence in my yard, I would want the perimeter. But let's say I want to put carpet in my house. Well, I need to know how much space from wall to wall the carpet needs to take up. or I'm going to end up with a pretty small rug, or I might end up with one that is really wavy and bumpy because it's too big. So the area tells you how much space it's taking up or how big the floor itself is. And to find the area, you're going to take the length times the width, or you're going to look at how many square units are in each row, and then you're going to multiply. Okay, so let's take a closer look at area and perimeter. With perimeter, you add all sides. Well, let's look at this shape. Go ahead and pause the video and fill out this slide the way you think it should be filled out. Now, notice there's a lot of plus signs there. Think about the way we found the perimeter in the previous slide, and then think of how you're going to solve this. Okay, so the way I did this is I took the longest row across, and I see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 units in the top row. So I'm going to come over to the side, I'm going to write 4, and I know that this is a rectangle, so that means the bottom row, or the opposite side, is also the same length as the top. So I can go ahead and go over and write 4 on the next blank. So now I have 4 plus 4. And I'm going to look at the shortest side, and I see that the shortest side has 3 units. So I'm going to go over and write 3. And, well, it's a true rectangle, so that means that the opposite side is the exact same length, which would be 3. Now let's take all these and add them together. 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. 11 plus 3 is 14. So the perimeter is 14 units. Now remember, to find the perimeter, you add all sides. And the perimeter is the sum, S-U-M, of all sides added together. Now let's look at area. The area is length times width. So let's start by looking at the number of units in each row. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 units in each row. Let's count each row by 4s. So we have one row of 4 plus another row of 4 plus another row of 4. So 4, 8, 12. The area is 8, not just units, but 8 square units, because we're counting the whole square. We're not just talking about one side of the square. We're talking about the whole square, so it's square units. Try this shape out. First, you're going to find the perimeter, and then you're going to find the area. Now remember, the perimeter, you're going to add each side all the way around. And for the area, you're going to add each row of how many square units are in that row. So go ahead, pause, and see if you can solve this problem. Okay, let's move to the next one. Draw a rectangle on the grid that is 4 units wide and 7 units long. What do you notice about the rectangle that you have drawn? So it's 4 units wide, 7 units long. So go ahead and draw that. Okay, what do you notice about the rectangle that you have drawn? What do you notice? Okay. Now, here's my rectangle. I want you to place your finger on one of the vertices of the rectangle. Now, if you think about the rectangle, we've talked about side, 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 but we haven't talked about the corners. When you have a corner, you have something called a vertex, or when you have multiple corners, you have vertices. So, put your finger on one of the vertices of the rectangle, trace around the outside of the rectangle until you get back to where you started. What do we call the measurement of the distance around a rectangle? What is that called? When I measure the distance around the rectangle, what is that called? Okay, so trace the perimeter again. So if you didn't get that last time, it's called perimeter. So we're going to trace the perimeter again. This time, we're going to count the units as we trace them to find out what the perimeter of the rectangle is. So I'm going to start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So the perimeter of the rectangle is 22 units. 22. When we know the measurements of the length and the width of a rectangle, is there a quicker way to determine the perimeter than to count the units while tracing? Is there an easier way? Talk to your neighbor. See what they think. Is there an easier way to find the perimeter instead of just tracing and counting as you go around? Now count all the squares in the rectangle. I find it easier if I put a dot in each square as I count so I don't get confused. These squares represent the area of the rectangle. Remember, the area, when we talk about area, we're talking about square units or square meters, square feet, square yards. Okay, we're talking about the squares. So, let's count each square. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So the area of this rectangle is 28 square units. Now, how do I find the area of the rectangle? How do I find the area? Didn't I just say the area is 28 square units? Well, what if I counted across 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I counted down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Could I take 4 times 7, the length times the width, and still get the same answer? Did I get 28 both times? Yes, I did. So what happens if I don't have square units to count? I'm going to draw a rectangle that is 3 units wide and 9 units long. You do the same on your slides. Watch as I label the length and the width of the rectangle. Now label the length and the width of your rectangle. How can I find the perimeter? You could add all the sides. Could you also add 2 sides and then double them? So in other words, could I say 9 plus 3 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. Would that be the same as 9 plus 3 is 12 plus 9 is 21 plus 3 is 24? Is it easier to just say 9 plus 3 is 12? 12 times 2 is 24? One way to find the perimeter is to add all sides. I'm going to show you 2 more ways. Trace along the length, trace along one width and one length. Along how many units did you trace? So if I start at the bottom and I go up the side, you'll notice that I have 9 that I just traced. And if I take a right, I'm going to have 3. So I traced along 12 units. 12 is the sum of the length and the width. Remember, the sum is the answer to an addition problem. It is halfway around. I can double the length and the width, or double the sum of the length and the width. So I could say I could double the length, which would be 9 plus 9, that would be 18, and double the width. 3 plus 3 is 6, so 18 plus 6. I could do it that way and get 24. Or I could double the sum. So I could say 9 plus 3 is 12. 12 plus 12, or 12 times 2, or 12 doubled, is 24. Let's see how many different ways we can find perimeter. So you could do it length plus width, which would be 3 plus 3 plus 9 plus 9. Or you could do 2 times the length, which we already talked about, 2 times 9 plus 2 times 3. Or you could do it 9 plus 3 times 2. Whatever way you find the easiest to remember and to solve. Okay, so now you're going to draw a rectangle that is 2 units wide and 4 units long. Use the notepad to solve with each formula. So, draw the rectangle, then solve. Length plus width plus width. Or, actually it's not an or, because then next you're going to do 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. And then you're going to try 2 times the length plus width. Or the sum of the length plus the width. So, go ahead, pause it, and try it out. Okay, so it says draw a rectangle with a width of 5 units and a perimeter of 26. Label the width as 5 units. Label the length as an unknown of x units. So, I've given you a little bit of space on the side here to try it out. Now, when I say try it out, that doesn't mean, oh yeah, we expect you to already know the answer. That means that you're going to try to figure it out, to solve it. Okay? You're not expected to actually know how to do it. Just try it out. Okay, if you look at the next slide, you'll see that I've drawn mine. And I know that the opposite side of 5 units is also 5 units. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to label the opposite side 5 units. So if I subtract the two sides that I know, 5 and 5, if I subtract the two sides from 26, which is the perimeter, it should tell me the answer for both unknown sides. Can you figure it out? So if I subtract 26 minus the 2 units that are 5, which 5 plus 5 is 10, so 26 minus 10 is 16. Now, see if you can figure out what x equals. Okay, so we know that 26 minus 10 is 16. Well, I have 2 sides. That means I'm going to take the 16 and divide it equally amongst the 2 sides, because I have to have numbers, units going all the way around. So 16 divided in half is 8. So my x will equal 8, because 8 plus 8 is 16. 16 plus 10 is 26. See if you can do this one on your own. I'm going to go ahead and pause it, and then you'll solve it when you're done. Okay, now we're going to compare my work to yours. See how you did. So I know that one side is 8 centimeters, so that means the other side is 8 centimeters. So I have 8 centimeters plus 8 centimeters plus x side plus another side equals 28 centimeters. Well, 8 plus 8 is 16. 16 plus blank equals 28 centimeters. Well, to find out the difference, I have to subtract. So I'm going to take my perimeter and subtract my 2 sides from it that I know. And I know that 8 and 8, so that's 16. So 28 minus 16 is 12. So 16 centimeters plus blank equals 28. Well, we know that 28 minus 16 equals 12. And I have 2 sides that when I add them together, they equal 12. So what plus what equals 12? The answer is 6. 6 centimeters would be the length of the side that has the x. I can check my work by saying 8 plus 8, 16. 6 plus 6 is 12. 12 plus 16 is 28. Let's take a look at this again. How can we find the area? So area, the formula for area is length times width. We can count all the squares. We could count the number of squares in one row and skip count. a quicker way would be to multiply the length times the width. So we've counted every square so far. We've skip counted each row. This time we're going to take the length, which is 9, times 3. 9 times 3 is 27. If you have a difficult time with using that method, then you could skip count rows, or you could count each square if the squares are available. Most cases, they won't be available, so you really need to learn your multiplication facts if you don't know them yet. So, find the area of the following rectangles. Now remember, when you find the area, the answer is going to always be squared. So pause, find the area. Can you find the length of the missing side with the given information? So we have the area of both shapes. But in the first one, we want to know what the width is, and on the second one, we want to know what the length is. So pause it and solve it. So what are 3 of the possible dimensions of a rectangle with the area of 24 square units? What are the 3 of the possible dimensions? So we could say, what are the factors of 24? What are the numbers that go into 24? Let's think about it. And what could the dimensions be? So if I had 24, one side could be 2. Let's have a width of 2 and a length of 12. 12 times 2 is 24. Go ahead and fill in the other 4 boxes. And then on the next slide, you're going to draw the rectangles and solve for perimeter for each rectangle. So you're going to take your lengths and your widths, you're going to draw them out, and then you're going to solve for the perimeter.